What's up guys, it's the Sound Alchemist, and today I'm back to bring you more lore on Lorgar Aurelian, the primarch of the Word Bearers. It is raining right now, so bear with me if you hear some thunder and the rain. But anyway, the clouds are crying for Lorgar, so let's get on with his lore. After the destruction of Monarchia, the history of the Word Bearers divides. One is the history of the Legion that the Imperium believed existed for decades after, the history of a Legion pulling itself from the pit of the past and embracing its true calling, a false history. The second is a shadow history, the true history that hid behind the mask of seemingly loyalty. This true history can never be known, and what Imperial scholars do know of it is only distorted glimpses. On the surface, Lorgar's response to the Emperor's censure was to withdraw. For a time, his legion seemed to have played little part in the Great Crusade. When they returned, it was clear that they were a changed force. Whereas before, they lingered after conquest, now they drove forward with relentless momentum. Worlds burned, civilizations were made to kneel, and a trail of swift conquest and imperial compliance stretched behind them like a bloody cloak. It is said that the Emperor was pleased that his son had understood his error and would, in time, become what he was destined to be. To every other eye, the Word-Bearers seemed possessed by a penitent fury and a grim resolve to burn the past. All were deceived. The dark powers of the Warp reached out to Lorgar in his moment of doubt and offered him that which the Emperor had denied, a higher power to believe in. It is not known whom these voices were that counseled him, but the hands that guided him were indeed chaos. Again, much remains hidden, but a number of candidates seem likely. Cor Phaeron, Lorgar's surrogate father on Colchis, and his close advisor, seems like a likely source of poison, as does the Legion's first chaplain, Erebus. Both were steeped in the old faith of Colchis, a faith that was likely tainted by the powers of the Warp, long before Lorgar fell from the sky. The word pilgrimage is also one of the few fragments that has emerged as linked with that time. Thought its precise significance can now be guessed at. What cannot be doubted is that the Word-Bearers who rejoined the Great Crusade after raising of Monarchia no longer served the Emperor. It seems likely that the Word-Bearers' renewed energy in the Great Crusade was a cover for its rapid growth in size, as well as the seeding of its new corrupted creed and belief in chaos onto new worlds. It must also have been during this time that the Legion was cleansed of dissident. The last of the old iconoclasts, the few Terrans, and those who had not embraced the new faith must have been put quietly to the sword. The corruption of much of the apparatus of the Imperium must also occurred in this time. So it was that when Horus finally fell to the temptations of the ruinous powers, Lorgar had already long prepared for this. The idea of the pilgrimage is a journey to the legendary place where the mortals could directly interact with the gods. It was an ancient mythological trope on many human-settled worlds of the Milky Way galaxy, including Lorgar and the Word-Bearers' homeworld of Colchis. Of course, such a place, the Warp, did exist, and one could discover the primordial truth of the universe there, that the Immaterium was dominated by the powerful spiritual entities known as the Chaos Gods. Lorgar journeyed with his Word-Bearers to the serrated sun, to what was then the fringes of the known Imperial space. At this time, Lorgar had not yet fallen to the corruption of chaos, though he had turned against the Emperor of mankind. Lorgar believed that the Emperor was wrong to condemn mankind's natural instinct to seek out divine and unworthy superstition, as he intended to discover if there was any true deities worthy of humanity's respect. To this end, though, Lorgar no longer had any love or loyalty for the Emperor. He and his warriors rejoined the Great Crusade, but they did so only after their efforts could serve as a front for their pursuit of the pilgrimage. The Word-Bearers were also accompanied to this pilgrimage by 5 members of the Legio Custodes, who had been set by the Emperor to watch over everything the word-bearers did to prevent them from falling back into error once more. The word-bearers' pursuit of any scrap of information that could be found on the primordial truth, or the nature of the place where gods and mortals could mingle, ultimately led them to the expeditionary force to the Cadia system near the largest permanent warp storm in the galaxy, later known as the Eye of Terror. The decision was made to hold orbit over Cadia and for a fleet to make planetfall on the known world. The landing force was comprised of Imperial Army, Word-bearers, Legio Custodes, and the Legio Cybernetica. Once landing on this planet, they were greeted by a large number of barbaric human tribes. They were described as being dressed in rags and wielding spears tipped by flint blades, yet they showed little fear. Most notable were the barbarians' purple eyes, which reflected the color of the Eye of Terror itself in a spectrum of visible light. Despite the custodian Vendatha's protests and requests to execute the heathens, the word-bearers approached the natives. A strange woman emerged from the crowd and addressed the Primarch directly, calling him Lorgar Aurelian and welcoming him to Cadia. This woman, the Chaos Priestess Ingethel, would ultimately lead the Primarch down a path of spiritual enlightenment that actually marked the beginning of his fall to heresy and chaos. Later, this priestess would initiate a ritual that would see her transformed into the demon prince, known as Ingethel the Ascended. Within the Eye of Terror, the serrated sun chapter of the Word-bearer legions witnessed the failure of the ancient Eldar Empire firsthand in the form of the Crone worlds that had been scoured of all life that littered the Eye's region of space. Ingethel, of course, lied to the Word-bearers about how the Chaos God Slaanesh had truly been born, and warned them that the Eldar had failed as a species and suffered the fall, because at their moment of their ascension, they were unable to accept the primordial truth, i.e., the worship of chaos. Following the visits into the Eye of Terror, Lorgar ordered a cyclonic bombardment of Cadia, wiping out the Cadians and leaving the planet abandoned so that no others could stumble upon the secret of the primordial truth. However, the planet's extremely strategic location meant that it would prove useful to the Imperium, and in the 32nd millennium, Imperial colonists were dispatched to resettle the world, becoming the ancestors of the present-day population of Cadians. Perhaps as a result of the Eye of Terror's proximity, this later population of Cadians also soon developed the unusual violet-colored eyes that had marked the first human inhabitants of this planet. Lorgar's enlightenment was not yet done. He was determined to meet the gods of the primordial truth himself. 43 years before the drop site massacre on Isvan V, Lorgar took flight on a Stormbird gunship into the Eye and stepped onto the surface of the Crone world of Shariatha, located with what one day would become later known as the Eye of Terror. He was accompanied in his search by his demonic guide, Ingethel the Ascended. The creature inquired why the Primarch had chosen this world to investigate. Lorgar replied that he had seen the ruins from orbit, a city drowned in the rust-red dust plains that reminded him of the surface of Mars. The Primarch wanted to know what kind of creature Ingethel was, to which the demon replied that Lorgar knew what she was. But to Lorgar's physically attuned eyes, he could see nothing in the core of the creature's being, a creature incarnated without a soul. Ingethel explained that in the realm of flesh, sentient life was born and souled. In the realm of raw thought, the immaterium, all life was soulless. Both were alive, the born and the never-born, on both sides of reality, and were destined for symbiosis and union if the Chaos Gods had their way. The world that they now stood upon was where the realm of flesh and spirit met. Physical laws meant nothing here. There was no limit on what might be. That was the nature of chaos, endless possibility. Ingethel informed Lorgar that he was unique amongst the Anathame's sons, for all of his brothers were whole. Only he was lost, for his brothers had mastered their gifts since birth. Lorgar's own mastery would only come with understanding, but when it did, he would have the strength to reshape entire worlds on a whim. Lorgar then asked about the name of the world that they now stood upon. Ingethel informed him that the Soul-Broken, the Eldar, called it Yakresa before the fall. After the birth of Slaanesh, it was named Shariatha, which in the Eldar lexicon meant never forgotten. Ingethel explained to Lorgar that the reason that the Eldar were called the Soul-Broken was because of the birth of the Lord of Pleasure. In her genesis, brought about by the Eldar's worship, she claimed that the spirits of the entire race. When any mortal dies, its spirit drifts into the warp, but when the Eldar die, they are pulled right into the maw of the goddess they betrayed. She thirsts for them, for they are her children. She drinks them as they die. Lorgar commented that what Ingethel mentioned matched the teachings of the old faith of Colchis, for it is said that upon death the unshackled souls drifted into the infinite to be judged by thirsting gods. Ingethel replied that the primordial truth was deeply embedded in humanity's blood. All of mankind knew innately that something awaited them after death. Lorgar sensed something within the ruins. As he inspected the ruins of the massive spacecraft with his psychic probing, he felt something stir beneath, something burrowing upward. And that something broke the surface, in what first appeared to the shocked Primarch as the statue of a dying god that dragged itself from a grave of scarlet soil. Ingethel informed Lorgar that it was indeed an avatar of Kala Mensha Kane, the former war god of the Eldar. Ingethel wanted Lorgar to understand the lesson that even a divine being could fall. Almost pitying the pathetic creature, Lorgar strode forth and raised his Crozius mace, and then struck the creature, ending its pathetic existence. Lorgar wanted to know what the future held. The demon informed the Primarch that it would end as it had begun. It would end in war, and Lorgar ordered the demon to show him. Lorgar was then suddenly transported before the Eternity Gate, located within the Emperor's imperial palace on Terra. This was the ultimate barrier, the portal to the Emperor's innermost sanctum, where the Emperor kept his personal genetic laboratory sealed away from his sons and servants. Ingethel refused to explain how they had been transported through space and time to appear here. Some truths could not be contained by the mortal mind. She instructed Lorgar to look upon his surroundings with an immortal sight. Shocked by the sudden revelation, Lorgar was granted a vision of the Battle of Terra. The Primarch was surrounded by thousands of phantasmal Astartes, fighting and dying at his feet. Foremost in the thick of the fighting were the yellow-armed Astartes of Rogel Dorn's Imperial Fist's Legion. They fought fiercely against the entire Legion, unknown to Lorgar, clad in cardinal red. Lorgar finally recognized the crimson-clad Astartes as who they were, his own word-bearers. The Legion's old colors had been cast aside to herald the changes taking hold of humanity. They were no longer the bearers of the Emperor's word, they were the bearers of Lorgar's. Lorgar continued to look on, witnessing a larger-than-normal Astarte transform in the midst of battle into a gargantuan, demon-possessed Astarte. In this demonic form, it appeared quite powerful and was significantly taller than even the Primarchs. The vision showed the demonically possessed Astarte going on a bloody rampage through the ranks of the Imperial Fist Squad, before finally dying at the hands of the Primarch Sanguinius at the threshold of the Eternity Gate. In disbelief, Ingethel informed Lorgar that this champion was none other than his most beloved son, Argel Tal, and that this was how he would die. As Lorgar attempted to step forward, he suddenly found himself upon a nameless world. He had seen all that needed to be seen. Enraged, Lorgar tired of being led around by the nose into this demon's lessons. Ingethel warned the Primarch to watch his tone when addressing one of the gods' chosen. Lorgar replied that he was only there by his own choice, and that he would leave by the same virtue. Calming himself, Lorgar knew that he was there to learn the truth of the gods, and that Ingethel was there to show it to him. He wanted to know why he had been summoned there, and why he had been shaped since birth to be brought to this place. Ingethel replied that Lorgar had been summoned because his life has been engineered to ensure that this moment take place. He was there, now, because the gods wished it. In the tangled skeins of the time web, Ingethel had seen innumerable possible futures where Lorgar had never come to them. Lorgar wanted to know why he was brought there. Why not his brother Horus or Guilliman? They were the generals that he would never be. Why not Sanguinius or Dorn? Why not Magnus? Especially Magnus, for he was the most powerful of all the primarchs, without a shadow of a doubt. Ingethel replied that the Crimson King was already a servant of the Chaos Gods, whether he admitted it or not. He came to his ruinous powers without needing to be summoned, and without ever considering the notion of faith. He came for power, because that was why all things of flesh came to the powers of chaos. And in 5 short decades, when the galaxy began to burn, Magnus would come to the Eye of Terror himself. With his revelation, Ingethel revealed one final vision, one more 40 Terran years into the future. And that brings us to the end of part 2 of Lorgar's story. Please subscribe so you can find out what his final vision consisted of, and what else occurred in Lorgar's lore. Don't forget to leave a comment below as to what you would do if you were shown these images before you. Would you turn to the gods, or would this make your resolve for the Emperor even stronger? Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video to all your 40k loving friends, so they can too be informed about this Primarch's backstory. Also guys, we do have a Patreon page, so head on over there and pledge a simple $1 so that we can bring you more epic 40k content. And as always guys, I thank you for being awesome subscribers. And you know me as a Sound Alchemist, part of OneMindSyndicate, and I am signing out.